Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho and in today's video we are looking at the top transfers going into game week 3. We need to talk about some of the most bought players going into your teams, in particular those budget midfielders and those Chelsea midfielders, as one of those is certainly going to be FPL Gold. So if you're looking for today's video, make sure you do drop a like and of course smash that subscribe button. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So first up, we have to talk about some budget forwards that are being in a lot of people's teams come game week 3. And one of the most bought players is going to be Danny Welbeck with back-to-back goals in game week 1 and 2. Managers feel like this is the one to go for at 5.6 million. Now, the numbers are good. 1.04 XG over the course of those 2 games. 5 shots, not the best shot volume, but still decent, especially for somebody like Danny Welbeck. And 14.86 expected FPL points. Yes, he is overperforming with 21 overall FPL points, but still really solid underlying numbers. And I believe he's second best for expected FPL points, only to Erling Haaland, of course. Now, the big thing about Welbeck right now is naturally a lot of managers were tempted to go to João Pedro at 5.5 million. I think we all know that he was the go-to FPL player, especially thinking that he was going to be on penalties. But Welbeck is the one that has emerged as the better option at the time of recording. You can see here it's XG 0.43, nowhere near that of Danny Welbeck's. The shot volume very, very similar. And in terms of actual FPL output, only 10 points compared to Danny Welbeck's 21. Now, the reason why I'm a little bit hesitant to bring in any Brighton player come game week 3 is because of that really tricky fixture away against Arsenal. Of course, the international break being between game week 3 and game week 4. I feel like if you can, postpone those Brighton players for one more game week and look to buy them in game week 4 with Ipswich at home, followed by Nottingham Forest at home. And even Chelsea away I don't think is a terrible fixture for Brighton. I think just gaining one more game week's worth of information is the best route to go there, because Rutter being signed from Leeds is going to be a rotation risk. We're seeing Ferguson back on the bench for Brighton in their midweek cup game. That is going to be minutes risks for all of these assets. And even though Danny Welbeck looks like a great pick, I think we wait one more game week, reassess the Brighton team, and then decide what direction to go for. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but for me, game week 3 is not the right time to be buying a Brighton forward. And if I was to pick between the two, I actually feel like longer term, João Pedro is the one that's going to get more minutes. Therefore, I prefer going for him at the slightly cheaper price of 5.5 million. So those are the budget forwards right now. Let's take a look at some of those budget midfielders for your teams. So similar to the Brighton forwards, there are a lot of budget midfielders that we need to consider, especially for those FPL managers that are looking at Nkunku replacements and need to free up some funds to invest elsewhere in their team. The 3 players that we're looking at right now is going to be Rodgers of Aston Villa, Fulham's Smith Rowe and Bournemouth's Semenyo. All of these very differing ownerships right now, Semenyo being the least owned at around 2.5%. But you can see his numbers here. He's putting up some of the best numbers of all midfielders, regardless of price. 1.14 XG is fantastic, and 1.62 expected assists. He is offering an all-round package right now and really stepping up to the plate as a bit of a Solanke replacement in this Bournemouth team. And 12 shots as well is ridiculous for a 5.5 million midfielder, especially when we compare that to the other 2 options who are actually getting a lot more traction coming into game week 3. Both Smith Rowe and Rodgers are being bought by a lot more managers than that of Semenyo. Only 5 shots for Rodgers, 2 shots for Smith Rowe. So based on the underlying numbers, Semenyo is actually the one to go for. However, fixtures are also important to consider. You can see here for Bournemouth, Everton away. To be fair, Everton have been poor this season, so it isn't a terrible fixture, but I always think at Goodison Park you are always in for a tough game. Then they have Chelsea at home. Now, on paper, that sounds difficult, and I would expect Bournemouth to be in for a tough game, but defensively, Chelsea are all over the place right now. So I actually don't think these fixtures are as bad as what they first look. Yes, Liverpool away in the following fixture is not great, but then Southampton at home. I think, even though Semenyo's fixtures are the toughest of the 3, I still think we can buy him and not be completely put off by those fixtures. But when we look at Rodgers' fixtures, for example, the numbers are decent: 0.29 XG, 0.68 expected assists, and anybody that's been watching these Aston Villa games will know that Rodgers has been the standout option. Playing 90 minutes in both, playing very central, influence in the game in the right areas, could have easily picked up assist in one of the games as well, and coming into some fantastic fixtures: Leicester away, Everton at home, Wolves at home, and Ipswich away. The major concern about Aston Villa in general is the introduction of the Champions League around game week 4, game week 5. This could be a problem for Aston Villa as a team, as they're going to be putting their best 11 out midweek every time they have the Champions League, and that is going to include Morgan Rodgers. So could we see a little bit of rotation with Rodgers on the weekend games? Potentially. That is my only downside for Rodgers, because right now I do think he is the standout budget midfielder. Now, the alternative is going to be Smith Rowe. I think he has good numbers: 0.45 XG, decent fixtures: Ipswich, West Ham, Newcastle, Forest, and I do think that his game time is only going to improve as we progress down the game weeks. The money that Fulham has spent on Smith Rowe, I expect him to have decent game time now, while early substitutions still will remain a theme for him. So, in terms of budget midfielders, if you're looking for the form player, it is Semenyo, and I wouldn't be put off by the fixtures. But based on everything that we've seen, the numbers, the eye tests, and the fixtures, I think rightly so, Rodgers is the best pick at 5 million. He's a brilliant downgrade from Nkunku if you want to free up the funds. Otherwise, I think I'll go Semenyo. Take the punt on those fixtures just because the underlying numbers have been so fantastic for him in the opening 2 game weeks. Now, finally, in terms of Nkunku replacements, we got to look at Chelsea, because the fixtures for Chelsea are good. Crystal Palace at home in game week 3, Bournemouth away in game week 4, West Ham away, maybe a little bit more difficult than we first thought, then Brighton at home in the following game week. It really does feel like this Chelsea attack are exciting, but getting the right asset is the big problem for managers. Now, we know right now Nkunku is being sold by a lot of managers, and Madueke is one of the most bought players going into game week 3 off the back of that hat-trick in game week 2. Now, very difficult right now to understand Madueke as an option. Didn't get picked in game week 1, now suddenly a must-own player in all of our FPL teams. I personally think there is a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction bringing Madueke into the team. 0.98 XG in game week 2 is fantastic, but is this going to be sustainable numbers, him putting up this XG and delivering hat-tricks? No, we definitely do need to reduce our expectations of this Chelsea winger, but on that right-hand side, I only think it's Madueke or Pedro Neto for that side. I really do think they're going to view Cole Palmer as either a number 10 or potentially on that right-hand side in certain fixtures. So I do think for the next few game weeks, Madueke could be a viable option, but I'm going to be honest with you, I also could see an Nkunku 2.0 situation where he becomes a minutes risk and we see rotation each and every game week. I do think if you want the 6.5 million, he probably is the best of the bunch, but it does beg the question, do we maybe just buy one of the best options in the game in Cole Palmer at 10.5? Yes, he is a lot more expensive, but you know, whether he plays in the 10, false 9 or off the right, he is going to have the most minutes of all of these midfielders in the game. Now, looking at the underlying numbers, he has played 2 games as opposed to Madueke's 1, but 0.28 XG, 0.96 expected assists. We really did see the Cole Palmer of last season in the game against Wolves, and I really do think if you're looking to restructure your team, I would ignore all of the 6.5 million midfielders and just get yourself the best of the bunch in Cole Palmer, especially with teams like Arsenal having a tricky run of fixtures. Maybe the move of Saka to Cole Palmer in game week 4 could actually be a brilliant move. And if you're looking to bring him in game week 3, that is a fantastic differential captaincy pick for your FPL teams at home against Palace. So to conclude, if you have to go for a 6.5 million midfielder, I do think at Chelsea it is Madueke, but I do think you are going to get problems later down the line. Otherwise, Cole Palmer is the man to own. So last up, we need to take a look at maybe the captaincy options for our teams based on the Fantasy Football Fix predicted points. So here we have the Game Week 3 predicted points top 10. Leading the line is going to be, of course, Erling Haaland with 6.7 predicted points. Away against West Ham, I actually do think is quite a tricky fixture. With the recruitment that they've done, The West Ham that we saw in game week 2, I actually think it is a game week where we can consider going somewhere different with our captaincy, especially when we're seeing someone like Saka, 6.4 predicted points, a good home game against Brighton, Saka ticking over really nicely, and of course, with midfielders getting an additional point for a goal and a clean sheet, I think there definitely is an argument this game week to maybe lean towards Saka. Havertz looking really good on the predicted points, but I wouldn't feel confident going Havertz over someone like an Erling Haaland. And of course, Mo Salah away against Man United is not a terrible fixture at all. We have seen him do the damage in the past at Old Trafford. So I would lean towards probably going for Erling Haaland over Mo Salah based on the predicted points. But if you want to go for a bit of a differential this game week and you own Cole Palmer, I really do think that is the play to go for this week. 5.1 predicted points, but at home against a Crystal Palace team that are struggling defensively, I do think that is a brilliant option for your FPL teams. It's just whether you have Cole Palmer in your team. Outside of that, Raya predicted to 4.7, been one of the standout goalkeepers this season. Gordon at 4.6 and Odegaard at 4.6 as well. I really do think if you own Gordon and Isak, you do keep for this Spurs game. As Spurs, even though they were very good in game week 2, do give the opposition chances, and I think in the counter-attack, Newcastle have their players available to hurt them in transition. So those are the game week 3 predicted points. I still think Haaland is a standout pick, but if you have Cole Palmer, I'd be very tempted to go for him as a differential captain. And that's going to wrap up today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. This, of course, was the top transfers going into game week 3. If you think there are any other players that should have been included in the video, please do put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer those questions. Have an amazing day. Take care. Drop a like, smash the subscribe button, and I'll see you real soon. Take care. Cheers.